Every year, United and Atlas Van Lines comes out with their survey of which states are gaining and losing population. This is a survey where they look at all the state-to-state moves that are made and they gauge how many people are coming and how many people are going from each state. Over the last few years, the results, for the most part, match what the census finds. Today we look at what the survey said for 2023. Now, tell you up front, I was surprised. Some of the old reliables aren't in the top 10 anymore, like Tennessee and Idaho. They were replaced by some that I didn't see coming. Didn't think that was really a big deal at all. The country is changing. 10 or 20 years ago, if you got out of school with a degree, most people had to move to a big city or a state that had big cities to find a job in your field. That isn't as much a thing anymore. Not as many people need to live in Los Angeles, San Francisco, Dallas, Chicago, New York City. Those people have now started looking at more affordable places to live. This list sort of convinced me that this is a permanent shift in American migration patterns. And in the coming years, we're just going to see more of this. So today we see the top 10 states that had the most inbound moves versus outbound. Got it? Get it? Good. Let's take a look. Number 10, Texas. If you've been following this channel for long enough, or you know anything about what's going on with people moving state to state, you should be surprised at this one. Texas has always been between number 1 and number 6 for quite some time now. They barely made the top 10 this time around. Like I've said in other videos, Texas is a great state and it still offers a lot to a lot of people, but I think they peaked probably last 2 years. Enough people have moved in where prices are going up a little bit and people are choosing cheaper states like, let's say, Oklahoma, New Mexico, Arizona, maybe even into Arkansas. A majority of the people that have been moving to Texas over the last couple decades have been Californians, and that's all the big to-do. That's all they ever talk about when you ask about people moving into their state. So those damn Californians are ruining everything. Well, those Californians have been looking for a cheaper place to live. Just like Texans back in the day were moving to California looking for more money. They needed better jobs. It's a pendulum, people. It's been swinging Texas way for some time, and now they're coming back the other direction. Now, that pendulum usually takes about a decade to swing each direction, so it's not like you got to move out, it's going to suck next year. But if you want to know why Californians want to move there, right now, the average home value in California is $746,000. Now, it's statewide. That's going to change drastically depending on where you are in the state, but overall, $746,000. Compared to Texas, overall, $296,000. Now, when it comes to Californians moving to Texas, it usually has to do with the real estate prices. A lot of other people move there from other states because of the quality of life. They have warmer weather for people that are moving from like Minnesota and Wisconsin or whatever. They have a very business-friendly environment. Some of the best schools, period, from kindergarten to graduate degree. Texas is one of the best states to get an education. And of course, there's employment opportunities. When you have a business-friendly environment, you're going to be pulling in a lot of really good companies, and Texas has been. So a lot of people are moving there for jobs. Now, how they do this survey is fairly simple. For every 100 moves that these companies make that Texas is involved in, what percentage was moving in, what percentage was moving out? And when you look at Texas, it was 56% of the moves were coming inbound, while 44% were going outbound. Number 9, Washington, D.C. I know it's not a state, but still, it's part of the United States. It doesn't have its own state, and a lot of people are moving to Washington, D.C. these days. Washington, D.C. has a notoriously high rate of people moving in and out. A lot of moving companies get a lot of work done in Washington, D.C. And it's just the nature of the city and all the different jobs they have there. People are coming and going. A lot of people go there for their career and they stay for as long as they have to. Then they get the hell out of Washington, D.C. Now, if they like the area, they end up right across the Potomac in Virginia. There's jobs in government agencies, tons of colleges and universities, museums, cultural places. So there's all kinds of people moving to this city that aren't just part of the government, but it's usually interns in a lot of cases. They're moving in to make those connections to help further their career in whatever they're getting into. Maybe they're getting into politics. Maybe they're going to work for the government. Maybe they're a lawyer and they're just looking to get that internship in after college. Whatever the story, these people do a lot of moving. That's why they move in. Why they move out is crime and affordability. It's a very expensive place to live. In 2023, the percentage of inbound moves to Washington, D.C. was 57%, while 43% moving out. Number 8, New Mexico. I am totally surprised at this one, but I think their affordability is finally catching up with the rest of the population. They're realizing that they do have some bad stats, like crime, and they got some serious drug addiction problems, but every place does. So people have started to become like this, it's worth the risk because of the affordability. Now, Albuquerque's got some crime in some other places, but a lot of their small towns or their suburbs are really nice and cheap. You just got to be able to deal with the desert. New Mexico is close to a whole bunch of national parks. It's a great state for the outdoor types, and a lot of the people that are moving there have remote jobs, and they can get a house for half what they could in Los Angeles or just about any place else in California. If they're leaving Texas, the home prices are about the same. The average home value in New Mexico is $291,000, but everything else, goods and services and cost of living, is a lot cheaper in New Mexico. Their price, in my opinion, I think is a little artificially high because they don't have as many small towns and rural areas as Texas does. Large majority of their people live in the cities and the suburbs in New Mexico, where Texas has a whole bunch of small towns. Albuquerque's actually been referred to as the last affordable city in the Southwest. My opinion, if you don't mind deserts, I think New Mexico these days is a better option than Texas. That's just my opinion. I know a lot of people would, disagree with me, and that's great. That's what makes us all different. That's what makes the world beautiful. We're all different. The percentage of inbound moves to New Mexico in 2023 was 57% versus 43% moving out. Number 7, Florida. Looks like the Sunshine State has slipped down a couple spots over the last couple of years. I wonder if it has anything to do with all those teachers that have been flooding out of there. Florida is one of the most moved to states, even though it's dropped a little bit in this survey. But it's about time. I mean, it's been a very, very popular state since, Miami Vice was still on the air. I am proud to say I've never watched a single episode of Miami Vice, and when I was in high school, it was all the rage. So why do people move there? Well, the weather's obviously going to be a big part of it, especially if you're coming from the northeastern United States, that's where a lot of people in Florida come from. You've heard the term before, snowbirds. But it's just not the retirees. A lot of Gen Z have been moving to the Tampa Bay area in recent years. Florida real estate tends to be around 25% cheaper than California, and it's usually about 5% more expensive than Texas. Right now, Florida home values are about $391,000, and that's the average. So I don't want to see a bunch of comments in the comment section about, oh, good luck trying to find something like that. I checked. There's a whole bunch. Nice ones, too. Just depends on where you end up. Florida also doesn't have a state income tax, and they are also considered business friendly. Every time I turn around, it seems like someone I knew from high school or, someone on my Facebook is moving to Florida. The percent of inbound movers in 2023 was 58%. 42% were going out. Number 6, Arkansas. Mind blown. Who would have saw this one coming? Arkansas is on the suckage list on most videos. I mean, they've got a lot of problems there. Being expensive ain't one of their problems, and that's what's drawing people in. In the last handful of years, since, most people started working from home, Arkansas became a very attractive option. Cost of living's low, housing's really low. Property tax, it's one of the cheapest when it comes to property tax. And then, of course, you have all the beautiful nature. Arkansas is one of the most beautiful states we have. It's usually overshadowed by all its problems, and nobody really gets to that. But a lot of young outdoorsy types have been heading to Arkansas in recent years. There's also a few towns and a few counties that will offer you money to move there. The typical home value here is under $200,000, $197,000. I kind of just poked around at some of the decent places to live, which is usually in the northwest corner, and about $200,000 is going to get you a livable, decent home. Sure, it's not on the lake and it doesn't come with a butler, but it's livable. It is Arkansas and might come with a moonshine still. Some people, that's better than a butler. Like Florida, the percentage of inbound moves in 2023 was 58%, and then, of course, 42% going out. Number 5, Washington State. There's this really weird thing about Washington. A lot of the old-time locals hate the state. It's really strange. They always talk about how bad it is and it's just this horrible place to live, and if I say anything nice about it, they tell me I don't know what I'm talking about. They act like I'm the one that gave them the quality of life score. No, other organizations kind of add all that stuff up. I'm repeating it. The quality of life in Washington is phenomenal. It's got its bad areas, but for the most part, it's a decent place to live. This is another one that's drawn people in for a few reasons, but one of the main ones is no state income tax. Now, obviously, the Seattle-Tacoma area is going to be a little more expensive than most places around there. But if you can get down to the Vancouver area or Spokane, it's very affordable. And Vancouver, Washington, in case you guys don't know. There's Vancouver, British Columbia in Canada, and then down by Portland, Oregon, there's Vancouver, Washington. It's a pretty big city. I don't know if they don't teach geography in school anymore, but I don't know how many times I've mentioned that my sister lives across the river in Vancouver, Washington, and I'll get some guy that thinks he's a genius go, a river and an entire state, Vancouver's in Canada. It's like, there's a second Vancouver. Just like there's a second grade, and they should look into getting into it. Washington, in my opinion, is a great state to live if you can get past the gloomy skies and it's always wet. Plenty of outdoor activities to do, plenty of beer if that's your thing. Beautiful state. And considering most of the people moving to, let's say, the Seattle area, Tacoma, they're normally people that have been working in tech and they've been down in San Francisco Bay Area. So they moved to Seattle. Seattle's a very expensive city, but to them, it's dirt cheap. As an example, the average home value in Seattle is about $800,000. In San Francisco, it's $1.2 million. That's not a mansion. That's the typical home. So like I said, the people in Seattle moving up there from California, they think it's pretty cheap. The percentage of inbound movers in 2023 was 59% to Washington, 41% heading the other direction. Number 4, Montana. Montana's been creeping up this list in recent years. I think last year when I did it, they were number 7. Montana's another state that's become more and more popular with the Gen Z crowd. It's almost like it skipped a generation, so baby boomers were all about Montana. And then Generation X, my generation, didn't seem as interested, but Generation Z, they're kind of laser focused on moving to Montana. It's the outdoors and great quality of life, next to no traffic, not a lot of crime. Their cities aren't terribly large. Most of them are small enough to be called a town. Just a beautiful place to live. That's part of the reason everyone moves there. It's just beautiful. It's great. They just want to be outdoors. They got plenty of that for you there. They've also got a lower cost of living than most states. I mean, don't compare it to Mississippi, Alabama, or Louisiana, but some of the more popular states. Colorado, it's a little bit cheaper, definitely cheaper than California and Washington. That's what draws a lot of people in. Montana's getting a lot of people from New York too, so they don't get to just blame Californians. They're getting a lot of New Yorkers and people from New Jersey. The typical home value is $446,000, which for a popular state, that's not a terrible number. Sure, if you're living in the Oklahoma outback and you hear that number, you're going to spit out your false teeth. But if you're in San Francisco, you just started packing. The percent of inbound movers in 2023 was 59% in Montana, with 41% going out. Number 3, New Hampshire. New Hampshire's another state that's been gaining popularity in recent years. Actually, most of the New England states have, unless you count Connecticut. Have they kicked Connecticut out of New England yet? I hear they want to. But most of the states in New England have been gaining popularity in recent years. Low crime, beautiful scenery, small towns that are just beautiful. Not really affordable when you compare it to other parts of the country, but it's not crazy expensive like Los Angeles, New York, or San Francisco. And you got to be ready to deal with some brutal winters. If you're just getting out of school, recent grad, you probably know that there's a lot of startups going on in New England, in New Hampshire especially. The percentage of inbound movers in 2023 was 60%, with obviously 40% heading out. Number 2, North Carolina. This one shouldn't be a surprise. People have been picking up North Carolina's scent for some time now. It started off being like the Raleigh-Durham area, then Asheville got popular for a while. Now Charlotte's getting popular again, along with a few other little areas. Now there's a lot of reasons people are moving out to North Carolina from all kinds of states. Obviously it's going to be the lower cost living and lower housing costs. Those are big for everyone no matter what state it is. In North Carolina, they're doing pretty good, especially for a state that's desirable. They also have pretty decent weather, and you're also close close to the mountains and the beach. It's also a big one if you work in healthcare. They've got a lot of healthcare jobs and a lot of really great hospitals and medical facilities in North Carolina. The percentage of inbound moves in 2023 was 64%, with obviously 36% moving out. All right, if you're thinking about moving to one of these states, there's a link for Home and Money in the description box below. That's a website that can get you in touch with a real estate agent wherever you want to move to in the country. They got a bunch of other things on their website too, but that's the main thing I like. All right, on to number 1. And number 1, Maine. Remember everything I said about New Hampshire? It's the same for Maine. A little more wide open because it's a bigger state and not as many people. This state has become very popular with Gen X and millennials. Maine is a very friendly state. It's beautiful, plenty of nature, and that's what's drawn people in. It is a little more expensive than other places you can find in the country, but there's a lot luring people to this state. The crime rate's part of it. It's so low, it's ridiculous. I say that knowing they had a mass shooting a couple months back. That might change their numbers, but they're still a relatively safe state. The percentage of inbound moves in 2023 was 64% and out was 36%. Same as North Carolina. YouTube thinks you'll like one of the videos that's being suggested right now. Go ahead and give it a look. All right, everyone. Have a great day. Be nice to each other.